As the market begins to shift, some of us may suffer from imposter syndrome. We begin to think that our success in the recent past may have been a fluke, and now people will see that we're really not that good. And what will our family think if our income drops? And all kinds of stories that the mind spins. If you're experiencing this, you may be suffering imposter syndrome. It's important to understand imposter syndrome so that you can confirm whether or not you're experiencing it. Everyone feels like an imposter sometimes, and this is pretty natural. What exactly is imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome is where you are regularly experiencing thoughts and feelings that you're a fraud. And please notice the word regularly. Experiencing these thoughts now and again is not imposter syndrome. A person that experiences imposter syndrome will believe that they do not deserve to be where they are. This can be in a specific job description or even when you own your own business. Imposter syndrome can also arise in your personal life. You may feel that you do not deserve your spouse, for example. When you experience imposter syndrome, you're going to feel a lot more anxious than usual. You can become terrified that you will be found out as an imposter and that the consequences will be dire. Some people that suffer from imposter syndrome feel like their whole world is imploding. I can tell you firsthand, this is something that can be very devastating if you're unaware of its power. If you're experiencing imposter syndrome, it will make you feel lousy. It will change your state of mind, and you can experience all kinds of negative emotions. Feeling like a fraud all the time is not pleasant. Worrying about letting yourself and your loved ones down can be heart-wrenching. Experiencing imposter syndrome is likely, however. You're normal. The truth is, there are many people that are experiencing imposter syndrome right now because of the shift in the real estate and mortgage markets. Experts predict that as many as 70% of the population will suffer from imposter syndrome at one point or another in their life. It's possible to experience it more than once. So let's look at some of the signs that you may have imposter syndrome. One of the most common signals is an increase in self-doubt. If you've noticed that your self-esteem or feelings of self-worth has really tanked recently, this could be due to thinking that you're an imposter. If you're showing perfectionist tendencies, a lot of people that experience imposter syndrome start to develop perfectionist tendencies. You may feel like you need to do everything perfectly to prove to others that you're not an imposter. As we know, perfectionism has a lot of drawbacks. We all know the reality is that nobody and nothing in life is perfect. The imposter within may disagree, however. Another symptom is always trying to perform better than other people. This is not your run-of-the-mill competitive spirit. We believe that the rationale behind this is the need to prove that you're not a fraud. People suffering from imposter syndrome often work harder than anyone else to ensure that they are seen to be top performers or top producers. This can result in physical and mental distress. Imposter syndrome can show up as self-sabotage. People that regularly experience feelings of being an imposter are more prone to self-sabotage. You may be progressing really well and then suddenly do something to undo all of your good work before putting it out in the world, where it may be seen. And the reason for this is that you probably have a self-confidence crisis and think that you're not good enough, so you want to avoid the judgment of others. Struggling to accept compliments is a sign. If you're experiencing imposter syndrome, you may find it tough to accept compliments from others. You don't feel like you're worthy, so any compliments received can be ignored because you believe that the other people are just feeling sorry for you. Let's look at some ideas to help overcome imposter syndrome. When you want to overcome imposter syndrome, it's critical that you use the right techniques to do this. It is important to accept that you and your brain are normal. There is an imposter in everyone. As I said before, almost without exception, everyone will experience feelings of being an imposter or not belonging at some time in their life. This is completely natural and it's normal, especially when you've taken on any new challenge or there's been a shift in your routine like we're suffering or experiencing now. You're not sure how you complete the challenge or whether or not you have the skills or the makeup to succeed. and this raises uncertainty. It's important to accept that this is a normal situation and remain positive about your life. The first place to begin to loosen the grip of the imposter syndrome is in becoming aware of what your mind is saying. Notice the symptoms as they're happening and the story the mind is spinning. Write down what you discover. This is a powerful first step. Notice if your mind is seeking perfection. Logically, we know that nobody is perfect in this world. All of us have various strengths and weaknesses. And we've all made many, many mistakes and will continue to do this. It's the way we learn and grow, right? Real progress requires you catching the mind, creating the story. And once you notice the way your mind's inner critic or judge tries to convince you that you're not good enough, you will begin to loosen its grip. Notice your mind comparing yourself with others. Something that most people do when they're suffering from imposter syndrome is to compare themselves with others. They do this because they feel it's a good way to confirm that they're not an imposter. In theory, it makes sense, right? But in practice, it doesn't work. Every time you compare yourself to another person, it's very likely that you're going to discover something about them which they have and you don't. Your mind may create thoughts that you're not good enough because someone else can do something better than you, whether or not that's true. Once again, catch the mind at work. Notice what the mind is saying. Do this as a reporter. Write the story without emotion or self-criticism. Give the voice a name, comparing Kathy at work again. And finally, sit with your feelings that come up. Give them space. Ask yourself, could you let this feeling go? Challenge the story. Ask yourself, is the story true? Ask yourself what other perspectives you could consider. Ask yourself this powerful question. If you could not have this thought, how would you react or act? Watch yourself when on social media. These days, people are glued to their smartphones. The problem with social media for those experiencing imposter syndrome is that they're very likely to come across other people that seem to have a much better life than you do. This is usually far from the truth, as social media users often offer their life's highlight reels, I call it. Even if you know that this is the case, you start to think about your own life and what's missing. And this can lead to feelings of inadequacy, which will not help. We suggest you reduce the amount of time spent on social media, but even more important, notice the reaction and what your mind is saying about any posts that bring up the feelings of being an imposter, the feelings of inadequacy or not good enoughness. To wrap up, our minds can work for us, but as you can see, the mind can also work against us. Imposter syndrome can be reduced by noticing the mind at work, catching the cast of characters in the story and giving it a name, and then begin to neutralize the emotions, questioning the story, consider finding proof that will offset the judgments of the mind, and see if you can reframe the story from a different perspective in a way that's more supportive and useful. Seek to shift to a different perspective, as I just said. It's important to know that the mind is always trying to protect you and keep you safe. It's doing its job with these stories by keeping you from going into situations that it does not understand. It sees change as a threat. Once we can recognize this, we no longer are tormented or jerked around by the thoughts it creates. If you would like a free complimentary clarity session, please go to billfoss.com and go ahead and schedule a session, and we can talk about imposter syndrome if that's something that you seem to be having a struggle with. Thank you.